Phil Long, and our topic this week is corn roots for top yields. So the first question we have for you, Phil, how do corn roots influence late season stalk health?
Sure. It seems like an interesting time to talk about corn roots, but we talk about this all season long, and it's really critical, especially now when we get to harvest, because now in a tough year like 2021, we're talking about the impacts of the drought and lack of moisture and things, and the root system and how it developed early on really is critical to what we see out in the field right now, whether it's perfectly green plants or ones that are senescing or ones that are having trouble staying upright and things like that. So we talk about this a lot, but we're going to just kind of review and evaluate. I'm going to show you a little bit how to analyze your corn roots and make a determination on whether you're doing it right and whether it's helping you in the late season or whether you're struggling a little bit. So.
Okay, well let's dig in then. Why don't you show us some of the things you were able to pull from our demo plot here.
We talk about this when we're planting, but when we plant a kernel of corn, that kernel supplies that plant essentially up to about V3. It's using the nutrients and reserves that's in that kernel and also the seminal root system, so that seed root system. And then at that point, the nodal root system or the first crown roots start to take over. So we're going to take a look at the crown roots, those first set of crown roots, nodal roots that come out, and how that impacts season-long health and ear development and stalk quality late season. So I split the stem on this one here, and you can see this takes a little bit of practice, obviously, but it's a good skill to get good at, especially if you're trying to do a better job planting. This is critical. So the first thing we're going to look at here is take a look at the very base of this. If you split it straight down the middle of the stalk, number one, you can see that the stalk is healthy. It's white. That's what we want to see. Obviously, you can do the pinch test without even digging this plant up, and it's still pretty strong. There's not, it's starting to yellow up here, but it's still strong. This plant's still standing well. And then as you go down and split the stem open, the first thing that you're going to see at the very tip, the very bottom, it's kind of a triangle, and that's essentially the crown. The first 4 sets of nodal roots come from that crown area. They're all smashed together. And then as you jump up, in this plant, it's about a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch up to that 5th nodal root, and then the 6th nodal root here. So you can see this 6th nodal root is just above the soil line. The soil line's about here. This seed is still intact. It's actually right there. It was planted it looks like how it ended up was about 2 inches deep. So I was aiming for 2.5, and that's just where it ended up, whether it was residue or whatnot. But you can see that's where the soil line is. So the first thing we need to do is evaluate why and what happens when you plant shallow. So this is critically important here, but when we're planting too shallow, this crown part of the plant is going to be pushed closer to the soil surface. So it's typically about 3/4 of an inch. That's always where it establishes, as long as you're planting deep enough. If you plant too shallow, that mesocotyl, that extension there from the seed, doesn't give it enough room. It's going to push that crown closer to the surface. This is early on in the season. This is where we talk about floppy corn plants. They can't get those first nodal roots established because it's in dry soil. Especially if it's really hot out and dry, it'll burn up and they'll not establish well, and then the corn plants fall over. That's that V3, V8 time frame. What happens during that time frame? Well, we're also establishing the kernel ground. I'm just going to bend over and grab these ears here. But the ear is the other thing you should be looking at along with the roots on your corn plant. So these two actually are both 16 around, really nice ears. Ran out of gas a little bit at the top, but we're dealing with a lot of drought in this neck of the woods. So the biggest thing is understanding where that crown establishes based on these top couple nodal roots. So if that 6th nodal root there, or if your 5th one is out of the ground, you're probably going to be in trouble. The further to the soil surface that crown establishes, the more drought stress is going to impact these plants. So obviously you're not going to have 16 around. You're not going to have a nice ear. I'll show you a plant here in a second that has issues like that. But it's affecting, this is kind of like the control center of the plant. It really determines, we talk about this a lot in alfalfa, the crown is extremely important, and having it right there where it wants to be, 3/4 of an inch or so below the soil surface, keeps it cooler, keeps the plant healthier longer. And as that gets pushed towards the soil surface, you're going to see on this last one here that we have some stalk rot, major stalk rot issues coming into the plant. So as it gets more stressed along the season, that's really what tempers that and helps keep it calm and still taking up nutrients and cooler in general to really help the plant do better throughout the season. So splitting the plant is the first thing that you want to get good at. And obviously this one here that you've got, I didn't split the stem on this one, but you can see a very strong stalk, still green. That's what we want to see right now. All you got to do is strip back the lower leaves on this plant. If you don't have time to dig out in the field, strip back the lower leaves and take a look at that and see how green that is. That gives you a good indication of how much stalk rot is in that plant. So this one we can't pinch, we can't push it over. It's good and healthy. So I'm just going to trade for my last one here. And the last thing I want to go through is a much more pathetic looking root system here. This isn't actually what it looked like. What I did here was strip the nodal roots off. So I told you that 5th and 6th nodal roots there. Sometimes you get more coming from the top. Sometimes people think that's a good thing. It depends what kind of condition the plants are under. Typically, that if it's leaning, the plant's leaning. We've seen this. If the plant's lodging in the fall, it'll throw out, if it's still got plenty of, well, after pollination, I should say, it'll throw out brace roots from a higher up node to try and strengthen that and bring that plant back upright. Not necessarily a good thing in that case, but if we strip these nodal roots off the bottom two here, I've got the soil moved away. All that's left is the first couple, so I said the 1 through 4 nodes, nodal roots, left. So you can really evaluate that first establishment of nodal roots and what's going on. This is critical, and in this case, we actually have, as you zoom in, you can see how packed these roots are together, how close they are. Obviously, there was some sidewall compaction here going on. They were all forced to go through a narrow channel and to try and break down through that V trench essentially. So planting conditions probably weren't ideal, and that sidewall got packed. So we don't like to see that. What's worse actually, if you're digging up plants and seeing these first seminal roots or first nodal roots coming off here, the crown roots, is if they're flat. So if they're coming off sideways, they're not establishing in a straight down manner, that's the worst case scenario. That means that they hit a compaction layer, they can't get any lower, and likely they're going to be starved for water and nutrients. This is V3, V5, V6, all a critical time to develop this year. So what typically happens is it doesn't develop that many rows around. So you may have 12 or 14 around when it should be 16 or 18. So we end up seeing a much more reduced ear in this case. And this one struggled all season. It's a little bit of a beer bottle ear, but that's because of what happened early season. And I did split the stem, and you can see here it looks punky. Looks like it's struggling a little bit, and as we split it apart, obviously there's some anthracnose coming in here. You can see it's very easy to pinch, very easy to push over. If you push this one over, it's going to fold at the weakest node on the lower part of the plant. So the weight of the ear and the wind is going to easily bend that over and cause it to lodge late season. So this is part of this is the season that we're dealing with. And the other part is early season. We talk about this a lot, but making sure that you're caring for that plant up front. The upfront health is going to lead to the end of season health. So if corn plants are stressed early in the season, it slows them down. So the goal with high yield is to keep it in that period from when it hits tassel during those grain fill periods. You want to lengthen that out. So if you stress it early, you're going to delay when it's going to flower. If you stress it late, you're going to hasten it or speed up that time period. So both of those, whether it's whether the stress comes early in the season before flowering or after flowering, both of those are going to crunch that grain fill window, which is the two things we don't want to do. Obviously, when you spray a fungicide, this is the easiest way, in my mind, to explain it. When you spray a fungicide, you keep that plant healthier, just like having roots where they should be. You can go out in your field right now and see it. The The ones that have a better root system are going to stay greener, healthier, longer, have better stalks, and lengthen that window. Just like a fungicide does, it helps stay in that grain fill period a little bit longer and adding more weight to the kernel. So really just talking about, some of the critical things that maybe aren't as obvious, but the root system of the corn plant, it's not fun to dig up, but it's probably the best thing you can do to evaluate what happened this year and prep for next year.
Okay, so as we kind of head into harvest, it's coming up here in the next couple of weeks for a lot of folks. What are some things that we should look for and expect given the variables that we have seen this year?
Sure. Yeah, I think, number one, lodging. I've seen it in a lot of places. There's a lot of stock lodging out there. Early senescence, I saw almost a month ago. It seems like the last few years we've seen a lot of this, the corn dying from the top down, running out of gas and dying from the top down. So that combined with, the stresses that we had, especially in this area, after pollination, really started to stress the crop. If there's any kind of nutrient deficiency, if they struggled with those early season crown roots were struggling to pull up nutrients, not only will you have stock rot issues, but you'll have early senescence too. So like I said, shortening up that window that you don't want to shorten up, but as the plant is compromised, it's going to take, our hybrids, we don't talk about this enough, but the hybrids we have nowadays do an outstanding job, not only at nutrient uptake, but also making sure that they fill that ear out. So they're going to do, most of them, whatever they can to pull up nutrients and finish that ear, and the last part of that's going to come from the stalk. So it's going to deplete that stalk, it's going to run out of reserves and not stay as healthy as late in the season. So, go after those fields. Don't just rely on when you planted it or the maturity that's out there. Go out, take a look at your field, walk out into them a little ways. Don't just look at the end rows, and really evaluate, what's going on in terms of stock quality.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for those tips today, Phil. Thanks for the questions, viewers. We'll be back next week with another topic.